You are just a pathetic little engineer, with absolutely nobody to back you up. Do you really think you can defy my direct orders? On my rig? Pack your trash and get off this platform. By tomorrow morning. The termination papers hit Maya right in the chest, scattering across the cold steel floor of the control room. Vance, the rig director, glared at her, with veins popping in his thick neck. In the far corner of the chaotic room, a man covered in grease and oil stood completely still. He wore a standard welder's uniform and was holding the hand of a little girl, clutching a stuffed bear. Instead of panicking like the rest of the crew, he calmly pulled out a heavy, encrypted satellite phone. That was not the kind of device a simple deckhand could ever afford to own. Hello, everyone. The truth and the courage to protect nature are always shielded by the universe against bottomless greed. If you believe in that, take a second to hit subscribe and leave a firm statement in the comments. Right. I choose to stand on the side of justice to protect a sustainable future. The story you are about to hear will prove exactly how high the price of the truth really is. Let us rewind just a few hours earlier to understand how a quiet marine environmental engineer ended up facing the wrath of a ruthless boss. Maya was not just doing a job out here, in the middle of the punishing ocean. Growing up in the foster system, with no real family, the sea had always been her only true home. She understood the delicate balance of the reef below them, better than anyone else on the corporate payroll. She knew the currents, she knew the marine life, and she knew exactly how fragile this ecosystem was. Earlier that morning, she was doing her routine deck inspection when she saw a little girl playing near the slippery edge of the helipad. The girl, Lily, lost her footing on a patch of spilled crude oil. Maya sprinted over and caught the child just before she tumbled toward the dangerous lower railing. She did not scold the terrified kid. Instead, she knelt down, wiped the dark grease off Lily's cheek, and pointed down into the crystal-clear blue water below the platform. She spent the next 10 minutes teaching the little girl about the migration patterns of the sea turtles, passing right beneath the massive steel pillars. A few yards away, Lily's father, the quiet welder named Edward, watched the entire interaction unfold. He did not say a word to interrupt them, but his eyes tracked Maya's every move with a deep, calculating respect. But the unexpected peace of that morning was completely shattered when Vance summoned Maya to the main control deck. He threw a thick stack of customs clearance forms on the metal table and demanded her immediate signature. Maya read the fine print and felt her stomach drop completely. Vance was planning to bypass the expensive filtration protocols that kept the ocean safe. He wanted to dump thousands of tons of highly toxic liquid waste directly into the coral reef, under the cover of a passing storm. It would save the company millions of dollars in processing fees, and Vance would personally pocket a massive performance bonus for cutting costs. All he needed was the lead environmental officer's signature to make the entire operation look completely legal. On paper, he chose Maya for this shift because he knew she was an orphan, with no powerful connections, no wealthy family, and nowhere else to go. He figured she would just put her head down, keep her mouth shut, and obey the chain of command to protect her meager paycheck. Maya stood there, feeling the immense weight of the ocean pressing down on her shoulders. If she signed those papers, the vibrant reef she loved would be dead within a single week. The local fishermen on the coast would lose their livelihoods for an entire generation due to the toxic fallout. But if she refused his direct order, Vance promised to blacklist her from the maritime engineering industry forever. She looked out the heavy glass window at the rolling waves. She remembered the pure wonder in little Lily's eyes when they watched the sea turtles swimming through the healthy coral just a few hours ago. Maya picked up the heavy metal pen from the desk. Vance smirked, crossing his arms, fully believing he had won the psychological battle. Instead of signing her name, Maya gripped the clearance forms and ripped them completely in half. She tore them again and again, throwing the shredded pieces right into Vance's smug face. She told him, looking straight into his eyes, that the ocean was not his personal garbage dump. Vance's face turned a violent shade of purple. With absolute rage, he did not just fire her on the spot. With a barrage of insults, he immediately ordered 2 massive security guards to physically drag her away from the console so he could initiate the manual override for the waste release valves himself. Maya did not run away crying. She threw her own body over the main control panel, wrapping her arms around the release levers so they could not be pulled down. The guards grabbed her roughly by the shoulders, violently twisting her arms back to rip her away from the vital control board. The physical pain was blinding, but she absolutely refused to let go of the steel handles. The loneliness of a hero is always the most brutal test of character. Are you willing to stand with Maya, right now, in her darkest moment? Please write. I choose to stand on the side of justice to protect a sustainable future, to give her the strength she desperately needs. Just as the heavy-handed guards finally managed to pry her bruised fingers off the metal levers, a heavy steel wrench clattered loudly onto the floor. Everyone in the room froze and turned toward the sudden sound. The quiet welder stepped out from the shadows of the corner. The man did not walk with the heavy, exhausted steps of a typical day laborer. He moved with a terrifying, calculated precision. Before the 2 massive security guards could even register what was happening, the welder closed the distance between them. He grabbed the wrist of the guard closest to Maya, twisted it backward with effortless leverage, and shoved the huge man hard into his partner's chest. Both guards stumbled backward in complete shock, crashing into a row of metal lockers with a deafening bang. They were utterly humiliated that a greasy, low-level pipe worker had just manhandled them in front of the entire crew. Vance completely lost his mind. He screamed at the top of his lungs, his face turning a sikara, completely blinded by his own arrogance. He pointed a shaking finger at the welder, screaming that he was fired, that he would be thrown in federal prison for assaulting corporate security on a restricted offshore facility. The welder did not even flinch at the empty threats. He stood calmly in the center of the chaotic control room, completely unfazed by the screaming director. Slowly, he reached into the chest pocket of his stained overalls and pulled out that heavy, encrypted satellite phone. He pressed a single button and held it up. Then, with his other hand, he reached into his back pocket and tossed a thick, leather-bound document right onto the main console in front of Vance. It landed with a heavy thud, sliding perfectly over the shredded pieces of Maya's termination papers. Vance looked down, his eyes scanning the cover of the document. It bore the unmistakable, gold-embossed seal of a global environmental audit, stamped with the highest level of executive clearance. Before Vance could even process what he was looking at, the welder reached up and pulled off his protective safety goggles. He grabbed a clean rag from a nearby counter and slowly wiped the thick black grease off his jawline and forehead. Little Lily came running over from the corner, completely ignoring the tension in the room. She wrapped her arms around the man's leg, looking up with her big bright eyes. She pointed at Vance and loudly asked her dad if they were finally done inspecting this rusty, awful place so they could go home. Right at that exact second, the massive digital communication screen on the control deck flickered to life. It completely overrode Vance's local network access, locking him out of the main frame. The glowing blue logo of the Federal Energy Syndicate, the parent company that owned everything for 1,000 miles, flashed brilliantly across the monitors. The voice of the regional maritime commander echoed through the overhead speakers. The commander respectfully addressed the man standing in the room as Mr. Chairman, confirming that the entire sector had been locked down per his direct orders. You could hear a pin drop in that room. Vance's legs literally gave out from under him, forcing him to grip the edge of the metal desk just to stay standing. The blood completely drained from his face as the horrible realization finally hit him. He suddenly recognized the sharp, commanding features of the man standing right in front of him. This was not a random contractor. This was Edward Sterling. He was the billionaire founder and majority shareholder of the entire global energy conglomerate. He was the man who practically owned the ocean they were currently floating on. Edward looked at the trembling director with absolute, unyielding disgust. He told Vance in a cold, quiet voice that the true wealth of their empire was built on protecting the Earth, not destroying it for a pathetic short-term bonus check. Edward informed the terrified director that the platform was officially under a total corporate lockdown. He did not need to call the authorities, because the Coast Guard tactical units were already 3 minutes away, answering the call Edward had made. The moment Vance handed Maya those forged papers, Vance dropped to his knees, tears streaming down his face, begging for a second chance, pleading that he was just trying to improve the quarterly profit margins. Edward simply turned his back on the pathetic man, refusing to give him another second of his time. Edward became the ultimate shield for Maya's incredible courage when she needed it most. If you are glad justice prevailed today, please write, "I choose to stand on the side of justice to protect a sustainable future." To celebrate this beautiful victory, the heavy metal doors of the control room burst open. As heavily armed federal maritime officers stormed in, they slapped cold steel handcuffs on Vance and his corrupt security team, dragging them off the platform to face decades in federal prison for severe environmental sabotage and corporate treason. When the room was finally clear, Edward walked over to the control panel where Maya was still standing. She was breathing heavily, her knuckles still white from gripping the manual override levers so tightly. Edward gently placed his hand over hers, offering a warm, reassuring smile. He softly told her that she could let go now, because the ocean was finally safe. He reached down, picked up the torn pieces of her termination letter, and threw them into the nearest trash can. Right then and there, in front of the entire stunned engineering crew, Edward made a stunning executive decision. He officially appointed Maya as the new global director of environmental oversight for the entire syndicate. He gave her absolute veto power over any drilling or disposal project worldwide, trusting her fiercely honest heart more than any board of directors. Let us fast forward. Exactly 6 months later, the rusty, dangerous rig had been completely retrofitted. With state-of-the-art green technology, the vibrant coral reef directly below them was thriving more than ever before, teeming with life and color. It was golden hour on the main helipad, the ocean wind blowing gently across the platform. Edward was no longer wearing a dirty jumpsuit, but he still looked just as humble and grounded as the day they met. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Edward dropped down on one knee, right there on the steel deck. He was not holding a massive, flashy diamond ring, bought from an elite jeweler. Instead, he held up a simple, beautiful ring, made of braided seagrass, that little Lily had spent all morning weaving, just for this moment. He looked up at Maya, asking her to be his partner in life, to help him protect the wild, beautiful oceans for the rest of their days. An honest heart that dares to stand up and protect the priceless things in this world will eventually receive a sky full of bright stars in return. Thank you so much for listening to this journey today. Do not forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a promise from your heart. Write, "I choose to stand on the side of justice to protect a sustainable future." I will see you all in the next incredible story.